Welcome to the Christian Contractor Podcast.
Christian Contractor Podcast.
A show created for kingdom-driven Christian contractors that are focused on scaling their business in God's name while positively impacting the world around them. If you're ready to ascend from a contractor to a purpose-driven business owner, we're here to serve you. Here's your host, Brandon Guthrie.
From startup to expansion, the 6 stages of a contractor business. What's up? I'm Brandon Guthrie with Dream Design Labs on the Christian Contractor Podcast, where it's our mission to help Christian contractors bring the passion and purpose back into their business and scale it in the name of God so that we can positively impact the world through the abundance we create together. Thanks for tuning in. I'm super excited to have Nathan Tebedo with Contractor Coach Pro with me today. Nathan, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. This will be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Awesome. Let's open up in a quick prayer. Dear God, dear Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I just pray that you be with us right now in this podcast, that you'd separate our flesh from our spirit, and that for our Christian contractors listening in right now, that they would remember to keep the main thing, to serve our brothers and sisters, to treat homeowners like human beings, to bring value to the industry, and let the increase and abundance come as a byproduct, not as the goal. And I just pray that we would have that energy in this conversation, and that as our listeners listen to this message, that's how it's received. We're just so grateful for so much. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Bam. All right. Awesome, man. So Nathan, super excited for Christian contractors listening right now. They are on the edge of their seat, tons of value about to be dropped. So before we jump into the magic, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Brandon. I started out in this industry at 15 years old in roofing and construction. And so I've actually been in this business now for 30 years. So you can do that math at how old I am. I started out just young, just working on a crew. My dad didn't own a business or anything like that. I just, I was talking with my dad, and he told me one day when I was a young teenager, he said, hey, it's always helpful to have a trade of some kind that you can always fall back on, something you know how to do in case life's path just doesn't go the way you thought it would. You always have a good thing to fall back on. And so for some silly reason, I decided to start in roofing as a kid. So I worked on a crew, and I worked my way up kind of just from picking stuff up on the ground and throwing it in the dumpster all the way into doing, all types of installs, from standard shingles to wood to tile to, metal stuff to doing low slope commercial stuff. And then in 1999, a little ways back, my dad and I actually opened a company together. So from that point, I began to do more inside the business, from production management and working on different marketing components, doing sales, and just overall trying to run the company. And then a number of years, I think he and I worked together for 11 years, I think, inside the company. And then I actually ended up going to work at AccuLynx very early in AccuLynx's days. I think I was their 9th employee or something like that. Wow. It was like 9 or 11, something like that.
That's awesome.
So I worked there for a number of years. That's where I met Jim Johnson, who is the founder of Contractor Coach Pro. And we worked together, and then he left, and then I left. And then he went on to start what he called at the time Roof Coach Pro before he changed the name to Contractor Coach Pro. And then I actually went off to work with security contractors for a little while, guys that did home security as well as commercial security, fire safety. And so I worked with, I actually got to work with some Department of Defense contractors, which was really interesting too. So that was kind of fun. And then he and I kind of came back together a little bit, and I came to work with Contractor Coach Pro over 8 years ago now, almost 8.5, I guess. And so I've been in and around and a contractor for the last 30 years, doing everything from, picking up stuff on the ground to installs to running a business to now providing solutions for contractors from the industry side. So been in it a little bit.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, for our listeners tuning in, they're in good company. You have probably so much value to bring to them. When you're running a business, you have blind spots, and it's so good to have a coach to be able to point those spots out. And so I'm excited to jump in today. I think our listeners are on the edge of their seats. So with that being said, what are the 6 stages of every contractor business that every contractor business goes through, and how does someone know which stage they're in?
All right. Well, Contractor Coach Pro has been around now for, I think we're going on 14 years. So we've been kind of doing what we do probably longer than most. Over those years, we have kind of come to figure out that there are these kind of 6 general stages. They're general, and sometimes people are caught between them, or theirs looks a little bit different. But once again, they're broad and they're general, and they're fairly self-explanatory. And so if you're listening to this and you hear me describe one of these stages, you'll probably say, well, that kind of sounds a little like me. And so the first stage, very self-explanatory. We call it the startup. And so this is kind of ground zero. We don't really generally have much in the way of revenue. You basically have figured out, okay, I'm going to start a business and I want to do whatever this thing is full time and be a business owner. And so that startup phase is generally kind of short, because your primary goal is to be legally capable of doing business and then starting to do business. So you need to get your company name, you got to get it registered with the state, you got to get a tax number, you got to get your business bank accounts, you got to get your insurances. You need to probably get some contracts drafted so that you can, have a contract for customers to sign. And so you're just basically trying to get legally capable of doing business. And then you got to start actually producing work. So you got to get out there and start selling jobs and getting that revenue into your company. That will generally lead into stage 2, which we tend to call the solopreneur. Solopreneur is somebody who kind of has all that stuff done, and now they're just out there selling and building jobs. And that's your primary goal, is to just sell and build jobs. You're starting to make money. Hopefully you're getting some consistency. You're getting better and smoother at it. And that would be kind of stage 2. And you're also typically doing everything on your own, solopreneur, right? You may have a little bit of help. Some people do. They have an assistant or maybe an admin or somebody helping them in the field with production. Maybe they got another salesperson. But pretty much everything happens because you do it as a solopreneur. That tends to lead into stage 3, which we lovingly call friends and family. And so friends and family, a lot of you hearing this are probably like, oh, yeah, right. So when a solopreneur starts to get so busy that they can't handle everything that's on their plate, they need help. And so what do we do when we need help? We reach out to those that are around us, those that are closest to us. So that's when you start seeing things like the spouse is now involved in the company. Maybe some of the kids are working at the company now, or maybe you've brought in one of your best friends or your parents, or maybe some of your siblings. We just try to grab whoever was around us to help us with this business. And then you have, that's stage 3. Then you got stage 4, which we call getting serious. That stage is where our little mom and pop shop is expanding. And even though we probably still have maybe a family feel to us, we've run out of friends and family to hire. And we need to start bringing in people from outside of our immediate circle. And so in order to do that, your company has to start to look typically a little bit more professional, a little more put together. We need to be attractive to somebody who we want to hire. We have to look like a real live company. And so we got to start putting things in place that maybe we didn't have in place before. And so that's when you start seeing leadership teams are starting to get developed, we're at the stage where we got to have one developed. And then you start moving into stage 5, which we call scaling and growth and scaling. So we need to start creating greater levels of definition around our processes, around our different departments. We need to have leaders in charge of those departments. We need to be real key on what the roles and responsibilities of each person are. So there's less and less overlap and more definition in this growth and scaling mode. And then, excuse me. And then you see stage 6. Stage 6 we call expansion. This is rarefied air. Most companies don't typically get into stage 6. This is when you start to see companies doing some real significant numbers. And they got to get super strategic about the decisions that they make, because small adjustments to what they do can have big effects. In other words, we're not trying to make huge, broad, sweeping changes inside of our business. We're looking for small, positive improvements, because if you have a small positive improvement, but you multiply it over 1,500, 2,000 jobs or projects, that makes a big difference. Plus, these are companies where now, we're starting to see like they've got 20, 30, 40, 50 employees. They are typically pretty dominant in their market, or they have multiple locations. And so those are kind of the 6 general stages that we see with contractors.
Wow. And like you said, most companies don't get to that expansion stage. What would you say the percentage of companies that get to that stage 6 is?
Well, so I guess I would have to put a little definition around that. So stage 6, you'll see companies that they're typically north of 15 million. So they're doing 20, 30, 40, 50 million a year. Now, if you imagine that if you took home service or single trade contractors, this is a lot of people don't know this, but 75% and probably a little bit more of home service contractors generate less than $1 million a year in revenue. 75% generate less than $1 million. Okay. Now, those numbers can vary based on the trade, obviously, because, roofing, fencing, windows, siding, those are all high ticket items. And so it takes fewer projects to get to $1 million. So if you're in the roofing space or the siding space or the window space, that number might adjust a little bit for specific trades. So now if you think about the number of contractors that surpass 10 or 15 or 20 million, that's a real small number, very small number.
Yeah, I saw some metric. It was like a 0.1% or something to even make it to 8 figures. I think it was something like that. So it's pretty rarefied air, which is interesting, because I feel like everybody has that as the goal of where they want to be. And which kind of leads into the next question perfectly, which is, where do most contractors get stuck in those stages, and why do so many never make it to the scaling or expansion phase?
So there's a lot of like choke points or trigger points inside of businesses. Most companies, as they're getting started, getting to that first million can be a real challenge. A lot of things, like most companies tend to go out of business within 2 years. And so they may or may not even get to that million before they go out of business. That next big choke point for most companies tends to be the 5 million number. And then the 10 million, kind of, for whatever reason, I think it has to do with the average amount of production or effectiveness that individuals have. And so because there's this average amount that human beings can produce, you see these average choke points. Does that make sense? So, totally. So for example, you might run into a solopreneur who is fully capable of selling and producing $1 million or more a year in revenue by themselves. And they just happen to be pretty good at sales. They happen to be fairly organized. They happen to be in a place or a market where they have pretty high ticket numbers, so they don't have to produce that much work to hit $1 million. And then some people based on some of those factors, have a real hard time getting to $1 million. So it's based on your ticket number. It's based on your market that you're in. It's based on your own personal level of skill. And then as you add people into that business, you start to see where their choke points are. And so it's kind of a tough question to answer, but those are the ones I see typically is like the 1 million, the 5 million, the 10 million. Once you crack 10 million, you get into this place that like that growth and scaling mode also comes with this concept of Death Valley. And so you got to be careful at Death Valley. And the reason
What's Death Valley?
So Death Valley is what happens when we weren't focused enough on infrastructure as we've surpassed 10 million. And if we weren't focused enough on infrastructure, then one of two things happens. Either A, we've just been so focused on growth and revenue generation that now we have an abundance of work going on. And because we didn't focus on efficiency and infrastructure, we start throwing money at the problem. We just start hiring people as quickly as we can to do things that people don't have time for. Everybody's out of time. Everybody's stressed. And so we hire and we try to bring on tools and we just start spending money in order to handle our volume, which you'll see your profit margin just go like companies that did 13 million and had like a 4% net profit rate.
Ooh, ouch.
Death Valley. So that's one of the things that can happen. The other thing that can happen in this stage is we don't actually try to throw money at the problem. We just try to handle it with what we have, in which case you end up burning your people out. People are running at 100%. They're running at their max, and they just can't do that for that long. And so your profit margins look great because we're trying to do 12 million with a 8 million staff. Okay. But those people are burnt out and they're like, I can't keep running like this. And so then you start to see people leaving and you see turnover, you see problems in your culture, and things, the wheels just start to come off.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. You can go both ways, either squeezing the eyeballs out of your staff, which is no bueno, creating culture problems, or having those tight margins. So the natural next question is, what is the most ideal approach in this situation? Is it calm, calculated decision making? Like what does that look like?
Well, there's two ways you can move through these phases. Okay. There's two ways you can move through these phases. One of these ways is significantly more common than the other. Excuse me. Just have a frog in my throat this morning. So the way that is most common for contractors, I call it fund as you go. Fund as you go. So what that means is all the money the revenue that we're generating right now, that's paying our bills, that's paying our personal bills and paying the company bills, all of that money is the money that we're going to use to reinvest into the business in order to move to the next stage. So in other words, like it's kind of like, if you're racing cars, you take some of your winnings from racing cars and you use it to reinvest in your car so that you can win more races, right? But then you also have to pay your bills. And so your business is kind of the same way. That's a self-funding. The other way you can move through these stages is what I call fully funded or just funded. And what that means is that you started your business with capital to invest. So in other words, you decided to start a construction company and you have a few $100,000, maybe $500,000, maybe $1 million to invest into that business. And you can begin to build the things that you're going to need very, very quickly because you have the money to invest. And so what you can do is in some cases when you're fully funded, you can kind of skip some of those stages because you have the money to start doing those things right now. Whereas if you're funding as you go, you have to wait to do certain things until you're capable of doing that. And so the thing that sticks people, and that's kind of a long way of answer, the things that sticks people is they're not entirely sure, A, which thing they should be working on right now, and B, they don't necessarily have the resources to do the thing they're trying to do right now.
That's a perfect way to describe pretty much a lot of people's mindset right now. They're not sure where to focus, and they're not sure if they have the right resources to focus. That's a great point. So for listeners tuning in, I'm sure just a few people are on the edge of their seat. So what's your insights for those type of people?
Well, the thing about today is that information has become cheap. Information used to be expensive. Getting information, finding information, hiring people who had the information, it used to be expensive to get the information you needed into your business. Right now it's cheap. You can go on YouTube and you can watch a video about everything. Okay. And so the problem, which is super cool in a lot of ways, the problem with that a little bit is what information is applicable to you right now.
So true.
There's a ton of really good content. And so people say, well, who should I pay attention to? Who should I not pay attention to? There's so many like content creators and gurus and coaches and consultants. There's a ton of really good information. The question isn't who should I be listening to? It's what you should be listening to.
100%.
And so knowing what stage your business is at is first of all key. So, like I said, there's a lot of progression in building your business and in life in a lot of different ways. So, if you're starting your fitness journey, you generally aren't going to walk into the gym and put 4 plates on your bench press and try to do 225 right out the gate.
Right.
Turns out about I read this the other day, 7% of people in the gym are capable of doing 225 on a bench press. So that's a pretty low number.
Probably Nathan's in there for sure. And
I don't know if I'm there 100%. Anymore. But that's a low number. But it doesn't seem like it's that much because it's just 245 plates on either side. And so the question, when you go into the gym, you got to figure out where you're at first. So you start with just the 45-pound bar, or maybe you just start with 100 pounds or 150 pounds, and you got to figure out where you're at to know how far away you are from doing 225 and begin to work your way to it. And so the real key is, number one, we got to know what stage our business is at. And once you know what stage your business is at, then you with some guidance, and that's kind of the next problem that you have, is that you go, okay, well, I'm at friends and family, so where should my focus be? And, it would probably take us an hour and a half long podcast to really dive into each of those stages and talk about where your focus is at. And so first thing you got to do is figure out what stage you're at. And then one of the things is you can look at the key problems that you have. Is it actually revenue or is it efficiency? Because you can actually, as an example, if you're a solopreneur and you're doing everything on your own, your business is more profitable than it will ever be. You have the lowest amount of overhead. You have the lowest number of people working there. You have probably the fewest amount of mistakes. You have the highest net profit your company will ever see as a solopreneur. So does that guy have a revenue problem? Probably not. Not unless he's like not very busy. So, if he's really, really slow, then yeah, he may have a revenue problem, but it doesn't take that much. So you got to analyze the problems that you have right now. And then it does help to get some guidance. Like, okay, so I'm at friends and family. Things are a little chaotic. Some things fall through the cracks while other things get done twice because we don't have a real good process laid out, or we don't have good accountability and delegation done. And so before we start thinking about expanding our team, we need to figure out how can we get better at what we're doing right now before we add more people into this chaos or generate more revenue, which would actually increase your chaos level as well.
100%. And it sounds like understanding where you are and what's focused on is super key. I can already think of some people that are struggling to focus. And I think focus is very important because there's so many things that I've seen individuals want to implement all at once. And it's like, let's stack one brick at a time and do the lowest hanging fruit first. And I think that's a perfect example why people need to reach out to you to connect with you, to learn more about how to learn which stage they're in and how to dive into and unpack how to focus on the right thing and what to do. So definitely reach out 100% to Nathan and the team to get more guidance. And last question for today is kind of applicable to this last question, which is, in the 6 stages, it sounds like one of the most difficult stages to be in is building a sales team. Why is building a sales team one of the hardest stages for contractors?
Oh, okay. So this is a little bit of a pet peeve, maybe a passion that I have in this. And that is that we as owners, we oftentimes view like revenue generation as the cure to everything. If we have enough money, we can do anything we want, right? And there's kind of some truth to that in some ways, but that's not 100% universally correct. And so because we tend to think this way, if I've got enough money, I can do anything I want to do and I can fix any problem I have. We tend to think, well, how do I get more money? They're going to instantly think, well, marketing and then also sales. I need to build a sales team so that I can increase my revenue. Building a sales team is one of the single hardest things you can do, might be the hardest, especially for those lower stages, building a successful, sustainable sales team. And when we say successful and sustainable, if you're a solopreneur or you're at friends and family, more often than not, the owner is the number one revenue generator in the entire company. So he or she might be running the company, but if they're also out there doing sales and they have a couple of salespeople, let's say that this company does $3 million a year and the owner is one of the salespeople and he's got 2 or 3 other guys. The owner's probably doing $1.5 million of that 3 million, and the other 3 or 4 guys are making up the other $1.5 million. And so what we're after is we're trying to figure out how to replace the revenue generation of the owner so that they don't necessarily have to be in the field and they can focus on their business. But it's literally one of the single most difficult things you can possibly do, because preparing for a sales team, getting everything in place, number one, that would attract people to your business. Number two, that gives them the processes and systems to follow, that has a job description that holds them accountable and also is reflective of what they get paid for. Having a compensation structure that actually incentivizes them to do the things that you want and doesn't incentivize them to do the things you don't want. In other words, putting their focus in places you don't want their focus to be. Your incentive structure is what will drive that. Having a value proposition, having a target client, the type of client we want to work with, then having a value proposition that is aimed at that person so that you're providing a solution that the kind of customer that you want will actually want as well. Then building out a process and a way of presenting that value proposition that helps you to close at a decent rate. Then creating a training program to teach sales guys to do that. And then recruiting, hiring people. So I just laid out basically the process, starting kind of from the beginning all the way to the end where we start hiring, that is required in order to really create a powerful, successful sales team. That requires a lot of time, a lot of thought, and a lot of effort. And the truth of the matter is that most people aren't at that until typically friends and family or getting serious. In other words, because most of the time that's going to have to be built by the owner. If it's not built by the owner, it needs to be built by somebody who knows what they're doing, which oftentimes would be a sales manager. But you'd have to hire a guy who knows how to do all of that, or you got to do it yourself.
Wow. And I can see that if you're in the trenches, you're going to be potentially tight on time. You need to figure out how you can get a little bit more time. As your sales team becomes more effective, that can buy you a little bit more time. Then you can start allocating some of your time towards building this system out. And the owner is the one that needs to, probably going to be the one that's going to build it out. I'm actually thinking of someone that's like in this situation right now. They just did $460,000 last month. He had 3 sales guys. Now he has 6, and his process is not super dialed in. So now it's time for him to, and that's exactly what we're pushing, is time to dive into, hey, is everyone following the same process? Yes or no? And pretty much no, not yet. And
the question
training
is,
systems, recruiting, all the things.
is that the best use of your time based on the stage that you're at? In other words, if you spend all of that time, like, do you have the time and the money to invest in building that out right now? And will that be your biggest return on investment? The answer is, generally speaking, at those lower stages, it's not.
Not in the lower stages.
It's not.
Right?
If you're a solopreneur, building a sales team is not the thing you want to do right now. What
No,
you need to do,
not.
more than likely, is, as a solopreneur, typically the fastest way to make more money in your business is to get some tools, resources, or people into your business that allow you as the owner to sell more. So training and admin or production help takes way less time, takes way less money. And if it gives you the ability to go sell a few more jobs as the owner, you'll see your profit margins way exceed the cost that it was to get that time back.
Wow.
But building a sales team could take you 6 to 8 months to do. Do you have that 6 to 8 months? Man. Most guys in those stages don't. So that's where, like, and part of the struggle that I have, and I feel for owners, is like, there's so many people out there in our industry telling them, wait, they can help them do this. Like, oh, you want to build a sales team? You want to get greater at sales? You want more sales? You want more marketing? I call those the candy of your business. And there's so many people that know that we're addicted to candy that they're just trying to sell you candy. And so people invest in those coaches, or they invest in those gurus, they invest in those programs, and they're not really ready to implement them. And it falls flat on the face. It falls flat on its face. So
true. So true. So that's why everybody listening right now needs to connect with Nathan over at Contractor Coach Pro, because there's so many things for us to listen to and be pulled in different directions. We don't really know where we're at or what to focus on. And I personally am seeing this unfolding right now in front of me with many individuals, and they could totally use your guidance and help. So that's a perfect segue into the next question, which is our final one for today, is where can people get connected with you and the team?
So I've got a few things for you. Number one, we do have a YouTube channel, and we have just recently completed a series basically on these 6 stages and the different things that you need to do in these 6 stages. And it's on YouTube, and it's free. We call it the Contractors Training Room Show. Okay. So you can find Contractor Coach Pro on YouTube, and you can just go start watching those episodes. So if you're going, what stage am I in and what should I be doing? And you don't want to talk to me. Okay, that's fine. You can go into YouTube and you can actually watch an entire series, one after the other, that talks about the stages and what things you should be doing inside those stages. We also, obviously, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can go to our website, contractorcoachpro.com. And if you'd like to get some quick insight, on our website, we have a quick survey. It takes 3 minutes. And you can go answer this very small number of questions. And our survey will give you a pretty good idea of what stage you're in. And it'll the results that it sends you will tell you kind of probably where your focus needs to be over the next 90 days or so.
Wow.
All for free.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. ContractorCoachPro.com. Go there, do the 3-minute survey. And the YouTube series is Contractor Training Room Pro?
Yeah, the Contractor Training Room Show. And if you search Contractor Coach Pro on YouTube, you'll find that series.
Perfect. Amazing. Everybody, check him out. Amazing resources. That's very generous, Nathan. Very much appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Christian Contractor Podcast. I'm Brandon Guthrie with Dream Design Labs. If you're a Christian contractor that wants to grow your business in God's name, learn how we do just that at go.dreamdesignlabs.com/apply. Check it out. It's free. I guarantee you'll get great value from the content. Remember, marketing doesn't have to be hard. All you need is the right tools and the right heart to serve. Till next time, stay blessed. Nathan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.